Welcome to In Body, In Mind. Join us as we explore the world of alternative and complementary health, wellness and life experiences. In this episode, you will learn how a heart-centered approach to providing natural health-based naturopathy services came about as a result of a deep desire to serve. As a practicing Buddhist, Craig Hitchens shares his spiritual journey of discovery and the benefits of holistic living.
Today I'm especially excited to be able to introduce a good friend, Craig Hitchens, and this conversation will open up and expand on some of the areas that I discussed in my previous podcast with Greg Campbell. Craig's another local living here in the Southwest. We share a lot in common, and we got to know each other 4 or 5 years ago in some challenging times in the community. And Craig was one of those people who stood up and spoke with confidence, clarity, and ease, and put a lot of people at ease with his advice and wisdom and guidance. So he's really emerged. And Craig's passion, and I think this is an area that I'd like to explore with you today, is it's a real genuine passion for health, natural living, organic living, and not only for his friends and for his clients of his practice, but also he embodies that himself, and he's taken that to the next step as well as to how to embody these practices and these principles into community, right, and taking it to the next level. So I'll hand it over to you, Craig, really to maybe wind it back a little bit, because you and I have sort of landed, with a lot in common at this stage of our lives. We share a lot in common, including sharing the waves of this beautiful coastline.
Beautiful coastline we have
here in the Southwest. But our paths have been very different. And like the conversation I had with Greg Campbell, he had this incredible mystical experience happen very early in his life that sent him on his path. And so I'd like you to, if you don't mind, to sort of unwind it a bit and take us back a little bit to the steps in your life that led you to where you are now, because you grew up here in the Southwest like many young fellows did, but your path took a different journey at some point. And
I was your typical young teenager. I was a bit of a rebel as a kid. I wouldn't take orders from authority.
No, you were never a rebel. I see that.
I found that at a very early age I was questioning the validity of authority. I found that it seemed to me it wasn't serving the good of the people, if you'd like to say that way, the good of the people. It was really more serving a select few. So it made me rebellious. It made me question everything. It made me certainly question authority. It made me question my parents and my school teachers, and I still have deep sympathy for those people at those times, because I was a handful. But it was that underlying questioning of everything that really led me to a more spiritual path. I mean, at 14 or whatever I was decided that I didn't think the world was set up really for the common person. It was set up for a more elite sort of person. And I found myself in the school library flicking through books, just absent-mindedly one day I came across the story of the Buddha. And at 14 years old, with a very rebellious mindset and a very rebellious heart, I read this. And of course, what I read on the page was the Buddha was a rebel. He pushed back against society, and
he had everything, didn't he? But he left home, and
he left home, and he off he went, and he pursued something completely different.
Yeah.
Well, that really grabbed me, and I went, there's something to that. And I didn't fully digest it at the time. It wasn't a real deep awakening, but it was an awakening of sorts, in that I knew I was going to push back. I was going to do things different. I was going to investigate for myself everything that I came across, every experience that I had. I wasn't going to just be blindly faithful, or have blind faith, or be blindly guided.
That's a very early age to sort of
It was a very early age, and I was
get inspired by the life of a great master.
I had no idea he was that great at that point.
No.
I read the story. It resonated with me. I thought that's very. I then sort of went on to be a typical rebellious teenager. I drank too much. I stayed away from school. I
said we had a lot in common.
My mindset was, I'm just not going to do what they tell me to do. But after a little while, that wore out. You can only do that for so long.
As it does, yeah.
And you realise that the only person that's suffering there is yourself. And you're creating suffering in the people that you love. And, that didn't sit well with me at all. So I looked deeper and I came back to the story again. And I just went, well, okay, maybe there's more to this. So I found myself in martial arts training.
Right.
And the discipline and particularly the self-discipline and the mind training that went with that, because it's 90% mind, 10% body, really sort of brought me to a point where I knew there was more to life than what the outward appearance was showing me. And I had an innate ability just to meditate. I didn't know it at the time, but that was, according to my teacher at the time, that ability to focus within and bring that inner focus out to what I was doing with my training was a rare find. In his words, I went, oh, okay, well, this seems normal to me. But I was still rebellious and I was still a little bit of a rat bag. But it did slow me down and calm me down to a point where I started to harness my energy and my mind and my way of thinking, and it started to become less about selfish want and gain and more about service to other. One of the things we had to do as we went through our higher gradings and the style I studied was you had to talk about the way martial arts benefit others. So I never thought about that.
I guess the golden rule in martial arts, which is similar to yoga, is non-violence, ahimsa, is do no harm.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of practicing, so you don't need to use it.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, I had to use it at times, and I had this terrible conflict within me because I did not want to harm people.
No.
To this day, I don't want to harm people. I wanted to heal them. That's what it was always about for me, was protecting me and the people that needed to be protected. And I'm like this big. I'm about 5'7". But my heart was such that I want to heal people and protect them. That's what I want to do. I don't want them to hurt. So that was the next phase of that awakening. So it came in phases. And then, as time went on, I got more into the meditative side of the martial arts, less into the breaking boards with your fist side of martial arts. And I found that really spoke to me. And then I began to really explore the philosophies of Buddhism and spirituality. Particularly Tibetan Buddhism. Right. Initially, I went to Theravadan, but it didn't really resonate with me. I think I had an understanding of energetics early, but I just didn't know what it was until later on. I had some labels put on it, and I went, energy, I know how energy works. I can feel it inside me. So moving into that phase, I learnt about crystals, and I learnt about how energy grounds and how energy flows, and I learnt about how to use all the points I've learnt to take someone down with, all the pressure points.
Right.
I then learnt how I can use those same points to heal people. And I went, oh, I like that idea much better.
Yeah.
And then it just progressed. It just grew from there.
I never thought about it like that.
No.
Interesting way you put it. So was there somebody formative in your life then that was pivotal, and from a teacher or a...
My sensei was a guy called Mott Davidson. He's a local guy. He was very patient with me.
Yes.
And there was...
So he's a practising Buddhist here.
No. I mean, as in Buddhist practitioner.
Yeah.
No, there wasn't. At that stage, I was reading books on top of books.
Okay.
I was drawn to 3 lineages really in Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism. There's the Drukpa lineage, the Gelugpa lineage, and the Sakya lineage.
Right.
And I read a lot around the teachers and the leaders of those lineages and books and things that they had written, and great masters like Sogyal Rinpoche and others that had given a lot of general readings, and of course Lama Yeshe, who was one of the first to come out to Australia. I was a great reader of his works, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's sadly passed.
So were you ever drawn to sort of like go to an ashram or a monastery, or
I was,
you know,
just didn't eventually.
shave your head and...
I did that anyway.
Did you?
Yeah, that was the reason that my hair kept getting in my eyes when I was serving.
Right.
But no, I was drawn to the readings of those guys, and you know, this whole mishmash of everything was coming together into a lovely sphere for me.
Right.
In that I was understanding energy, I was understanding how to use my energy, I was getting some insight into how the mind worked and the heart worked, and how it came one. And I stayed like that and sort of worked on my own, if you like, for a long while until I met my wife, really.
There's something else we have in common.
Not my wife.
No. Meeting my wife was also a turning point.
Well, Jenny's you've met Jenny. I mean, she's amazing energy. She's just one of a kind soul that you just, if you get to encounter her once in your life, you've done well. She's a very spiritually aware woman, and I felt like I had someone that I could finally open up and talk to in these matters, because most of the crew that I was around at those days wouldn't have a clue what I was doing inside myself and in my spare time. All they knew was Hitchy that surfed, and Hitchy that did karate, and Hitchy that went out drinking, and that's all they knew. Right. And to be fair, I never gave them any other impression. I was quite guarded about what I was.
Yes.
Because there was a fear there, but I mean, it was
because it was new. I mean, we're talking, this is in the 80s.
Yeah, late 80s.
Late 80s, and so there wasn't a lot of people practicing those techniques down in this part of the world where we live, in the southwest. So, and then you meet Jen, and then the two of you decide to share the journey together, and it's been a wonderful journey from
amazing journey.
The family's grown, and then you headed over east for a while.
We headed up to Queensland. I had work offer up there, and I had wanted to study formally Buddhism, and I knew of a couple of different groups up there, and as karma or fate would have it, I got over there and got us all set up, because Jenny was 8 months pregnant with our second daughter at that stage. There's a whole other story, but anyway, we eventually get over there and set up in the units that we were living in. I met a guy that I'd met many years prior to that when I was over there in the 90s. He was working as a bouncer at the time, but we became friends because we had this interest in spirituality. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a member of this Tibetan Buddhist group." And I went, "Great." So off I went with those guys, and we...
Imagine when you set out on the journey, how
this comes together.
These divine sort of interventions and synchronicities arrive, and it led to where you need to be next.
Well, that's it, and I mean, it was perfect synchronicity. That's a great word, because it just fell one after the other. Well, I met a teacher, we had discussions, and he said, "Yes, join in," and they were fairly advanced teachings at that stage. They were teaching on the Bodhisattva's way of life from Shantideva. It's called the Bodhisattva Charivatra, and I hadn't read this at this stage. This was a more formal text. And I began to read it, and I went to lesson after lesson afterwards, and it just opened a level in my being that I don't think, well, at that stage I knew it was there, but I had no idea how to open it up.
Right.
And it just opened up, and it was like, well, I feel like I'm home now.
Yeah.
This makes perfect sense to me. I understand how to implement this almost. And I had doubts. I thought maybe I'm just being arrogant. So I went to my teacher and I spoke to him, and we talked at length, and he goes, "No, if that's the way you feel, then that's valid."
Great.
So, and then
so this is, you've gone from your martial arts training to your deep interest in reading, which resonated with you, to then we always say that when you're ready, the teacher will arrive.
Absolutely.
When the student's ready, you're ready. You've shifted yourself to the other side of Australia.
That's it.
You now open yourself up to the next stage, and you meet a new teacher, some new knowledge, which not only resonates with you, but then is integrated. So and then starts to inform your life going forward.
Absolutely.
You know, let's move from beyond intellectual. Yes,
it's not just words on paper at this stage for me. It is resonating and circulating in my whole being. I'm living this. This is what I want to live. This is how I want to live. This is how I'm supposed to live. Probably was
your Dharma.
It was my Buddha Dharma.
It was Buddha Dharma. Yeah.
And I mean, Geshe Noam Genden was the first teacher that I encountered, and he was a wonderful man. And there was a little nun there called Yeshi, and she was so helpful to me. And we met. It was a very fortunate time to be up there. There's a lot of visiting, travelling Tibetan Buddhist teachers that came through the area, and the group I was with was connected with some of the larger groups, and I was very fortunate to get teachings and empowerments and do retreats with some wonderful teachers, Kamal and Rinpoche and various others. But I ended up taking refuge, doing my refuge vows, which is formalising your commitment to Buddhism on a lay level, and a layman's level, with Geshe into that. And then later on, the group split and there was a second one formed, and we helped form that, myself and Jen. And we had another teacher come up from Canberra, who were taught by him and another nun, a lady called Yana Corbin. And she did a lot of teaching with us, and she was a wonderful teacher. But Lama Chadek Rinpoche was the next teacher that we were under, and I found him very good. A lot of people found him controversial, but I found him very good. It resonated with me, and this is where we took our refuge into the Sakya lineage, which was the more esoterical Vajrayana lineage. And that really strongly resonated with me. I could do those meditations. The whole discipline of it all worked for me. And I found that period of time we spent with him and many others doing retreats and teachings and various things up there was probably the most centered I've felt in my life. I was home. There's no other way really to describe it. I could have been sitting on a piece of cardboard, or I could have been in the most luxurious hotel. If I was sitting there doing that, I was home. It was good.
Yeah, like-minded people sharing, a common love for the inner work, the inner practices, the teachings. It sounds beautiful.
It was a beautiful time. It wasn't long enough. I wanted to spend longer, but life circumstances were what they were, and we had to come home. My father was very ill. We didn't have long, so I knew before we came home that was going to be a challenge to my practice. It was my first test. Yeah,
and that the saying that the highest form of yoga is the yoga of the householder.
Yeah.
So you experienced that pretty soon on after returning to Western Australia, and would you looking to say speaking to some younger people today about paths or inquiries that they might have, what would you how would you recommend, or what would you say to them about Buddhism as a path, because it's not that accessible in this part of the world for
it's probably
ashrams and teachers or
there's plenty of teachers. There's plenty of teachers in Australia now,
right?
And there's plenty of centres in Australia now. It is quite accessible. I would say it's a wonderful opportunity for particularly Western kids.
Yes,
the Western mind is set up for Buddhism,
right?
Because we ask questions, we're analytical.
I didn't come across it at school.
No,
I didn't find a book on it. I was reading books on science fiction, and
it's a bit different. But
I didn't come across it at university. But I started reading books in my late 20s, and I loved what I was reading, and like you, I tried to incorporate what I could, but I then went off into other areas of the scriptures and texts as well. But so from a younger person saying, I'm struggling with life purpose, or what the meaning of life, or what it is to be spiritual, etc., etc. From your experience, from your life, it's clear that it's worked for you, and it's been fantastic. So I think there'd be a lot in it for anyone approaching today, from a younger person, if they had.
I think it's
open. They have to be open to it. Or they have to feel some joy in doing it, not like it's hard work or discipline.
It is and it isn't. I mean, they say to you, it's start where you are.
Right.
You don't have to be this or that or the other, and so on and so forth. So you start where you are with what you're equipped with. I mean, in Buddhist terms, spiritual means mind, studier of the mind.
Yes.
So you don't have to run around with your head shaved wearing robes to practice Buddhism.
I had this saying the other day that the only mistakes we make on the path to truth, truth of who we really are, is one, not to start, and two, not to finish.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
It never finishes. So,
any young people, I would say, look, there's plenty of resources out there where you can go and you can begin, and it can start with something as simple as going to a meditation class and just learning how to calm yourself down a little. If you want to get into the philosophies, there are innumerable number of books and commentaries that are wonderful, and a good qualified teacher will direct you to something that's around about where you're ready to start. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's actually very simple.
That's a good message. No.
It's very simple.
Absolutely.
And it's well within the capacity of any young person to understand. I mean, I started at 14. Maybe that's rare. I don't know.
So, can you talk a little bit how your practice and your beliefs and your studies and meditation and your outlook formed your health, not only your health and your well-being, but your practice in advising and helping and guiding others through naturopathy?
Well, the natural health studies, while I was over in Queensland at the time studying Buddhism, I'd already begun to study various natural therapy diplomas. I started about 3 at the same time. Because I was at the time making surfboards and I'd had enough of that. I wanted to do something that was useful to people and serve to people. And, living your Dharma, learning the Dharma, learning Buddha Dharma and so on is great to learn in theory, but it's useless to you unless you put it into practice. So for me, putting it into practice was, how do I serve others as well as myself? There's this equation in Buddhism where self and other and self equal.
I love it. Yeah, what a great saying.
So I thought, well, I've got to earn a living and I want to do something that helps people. And I've been living a natural healthcare sort of lifestyle for a long time. I thought I'm going to do that. So I studied the two simultaneously for a while, which was kind of hectic because we had 2 young kids at the same time and jobs, and that whole time was busy and focused, but super enjoyable. But the whole Buddha Dharma is to serve others and to help others and to empower others.
So it's just a natural segue for you.
It was very
alignment.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It made sense that if I'm going to do this, something that's as important as healthcare to people, then I want to do it from the heart.
And this is like 20 years ago.
Yeah, my oldest was only just born, so I was 20. She's 23 now, so a bit over 20 years ago.
So you then qualified as a naturopath?
Well, back in those days, naturopathy was done via a diploma, and it had a lot of stuff in there I didn't actually want. So I cherry-picked separate diplomas.
Right.
I really went around it the long way. I did a diploma in medicinal herbalism. I did a diploma in health science. I did a diploma in clinical nutrition. I did a diploma in advanced counselling. I did various bodywork modalities in using acupressure and meridian and oriental healings. Later on I did functional nutrition and medicine and so on. So it was in time studies you could probably put 2 degrees in there.
That's a lot. You just mentioned, you just rattled off
well, that's only some of them.
But imagine behind all of that, there's a lot of work in that. And so over these 20 years, how much has this world changed? I mean, in terms of the technology that's available now, yeah, it sounds like there's been a massive, like there was a lot of knowledge around 20 years ago, of course.
Oh yeah.
But it seems like the technology has now combined to strengthen and provide more accurate sort of readings around certain aspects which you didn't have 20 years ago.
No, that's certainly true. But the thing that strikes me now more than anything else of what modern times is showing is it's validating the ancients' knowledge more and more and more and more, especially when it comes to understanding the nature of reality, energetics, how energetics influences biochemistry, and how that influences your well-being, and all this new technology is really validating some of the most ancient knowledges through the Vedic texts.
I love the way you said that, because
it's incredible.
It's one of the things I wanted to get to in this discussion, because I'm aware that we can now measure the magnetic pulse of the heart, which we know is 1,000 times stronger than the brain, and we can now measure brain waves and brain centers that are being activated, and there's so many more tools available.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's been practicing in this area for as long as you have, it's really interesting to hear from you that it's not as if they've given you something new, they've given you the tools to validate what you were already working with, and which these Tai Chi masters would have had, the martial art masters, the yogis knew, the meridians, and the chi, prana, and life force.
All of that. I mean, it is all becoming actually more and more the focus of wellbeing treatments. One of the systems that I use, that's what it's entirely based on, and I find time and time again, I can do all the functional pathology testing under the sun and find this, that, and the other out of balance, and begin the process of using natural medicines and supplementation and diet and so on to start correcting that. But in a lot of cases, that'll be quite slow progress. If you want to accelerate that, if I measure their body field and I find where they're out of balance and the information flow is not flowing as it should, and I correct that, or I give them something to correct that, exponentially it accelerates.
Well, I love the way you said that, because the body field, we're then throwing it back out to the holistic. Really,
it's all connected.
Because in my introduction to this whole podcast series, The Last Wave, I was talking about this transition that we're going from where science has, the last few hundred years has been all about reducing and splitting things apart and studying things in their minute detail, materialistic reductionism, right? Yeah. And we've learned a lot from that, approach. So now we're entering this phase where we're putting things back together, looking at things from a holistic point of view. So, and as you said, it's, when we look at it from a holistic point of view, they actually save a lot of time.
You do.
But there weren't the tools available to validate that.
There weren't, and those wasn't in times past. There was certainly people working on it. The science was, of course, not popularised.
No.
Because of one reason or another. But I think the thing that really gets to me the most is that these types of technologies are not new. They've been around for quite some time, and it's been denied people.
Right.
This is the old rebel coming back out of me. That kind of pisses me off. It's like, people deserve to know this.
Let it out.
Right. It affects their well-being.
Yes.
It affects people's holistic well-being, and holistic well-being is it's not just your flesh and blood and your biochemistry. It's your bioenergetics. It's your spirit. It's your connection to the universe. It's everything. The whole thing is required to be in balance for you to operate properly.
When you just stripping it back a little bit, and I love what you just said then. I'm going to go back and listen to that myself. Actually, that was brilliant. You said the foundational pathology tests that you normally do. What are they, and what do they normally involve for somebody that comes to see you?
It varies.
What are you looking for initially? What sort of readings are you?
Well, I'll give you an example. If someone comes to me and they're brain fog and achy joints and bloating and generally
maybe not sleeping well,
and all of that, 99% of the time that's going to be based in the gut. Most problems are based in the gut. Right. So I'll do a stool test, what's called a microbiome test, a microbiome map, and I'll have a look and see what the lay of the land is there. And those sort of tests, that's stool tests, you know, we do blood tests, we do urine tests, we do saliva testing. It varies a little bit from what your GP does because we look further and deeper,
yes,
and broader sometimes.
uh-huh.
We're kind of like health investigators, you know, PIs. We go in and we're digging around and we're looking for how it all links together. We're not looking for just one part that's broken.
No.
Okay, that's broken, so what led to that and what led to that and what led to that. So you have this whole picture of an organism out of balance. And I don't, like I say to my patients, I won't diagnose a problem and call it XYZ disease. I will say this, and this is out of balance and we need to put it right.
Right.
And help your body get that right.
Yes.
And those functional tests are all biochemical based. And it's interesting to people when they see that, they understand that and can absorb that information. And then when you do a biofield scan and you show them the areas of their biofield that's out, they go, but that doesn't relate to that. And you go, well, it does because the line travels that way. And that information goes through those organs. That information deals with arranging the atomic structures in that area and so on and so on. And they'll go, right. Okay. Penny drops. And suddenly they understand that, and they get the mental picture that I've had for years, which is you're a hologram. Right. And if the parts aren't in the right spot, the hologram's not complete. So you can't arrange the particles off that if the hologram's wrong. So it's like having the wrong instructions to put a building together.
When you say the holograms, another word for that might be like template. Yeah. I mean, there's this template that body, mind, and
that's right.
Physiology and energy pathways. That's right. Want to form. Right? Yeah. You know, it's within our genes. I guess it's within our DNA.
That's a whole other conversation. Yeah, genetically, that's where all the technology lies.
Correct. And then how much does environment have to play in this imbalance? There's this going back and forth sort of debate, I guess, in health and medicine and science about, how much is it's determined by your DNA and how much, is
well, you can bring
by the environment. And you can. I mean, we're talking about being holistic and belief. I mean, that's the power of belief and the placebo effect and
manifesting your own reality. I mean, we're the masters that manifest our own perception of everything. So if you're imbalanced, you're going to manifest an imbalanced environment. Yes, your environment definitely plays a role in how well you are and how sick you get and all this sort of stuff. But at the quantum level, you're creating it. So that ties together. So unless
quantum levels, when we collapse that field of possibilities by observation, then we crystallize one particular outcome, which ties straight into, I guess, some of the Buddhist philosophy.
Oh, very much so. I mean, Buddha was a field
perception
the understanding. I mean, I've got to point out at this stage, I'm not way up there with the British days that taught me. I'm a practitioner. That's all.
But you're applying it in life and in your practice,
but their understanding is immense, and how health and your creation of reality and everything all works together in a holistic sphere of your experience of being.
But it's wonderful that we're having this conversation, isn't it? Because this is a conversation that we enjoy having. You and I have had a few chats about this, and with my wife, Davey Harpal, this is something that's a daily conversation with us as well, and in what we do. And this podcast, I guess, is aimed at sort of raising the level of this conversation, getting more of this conversation out there, and getting feedback from people as well. I mean, you said, very humble, Craig, look, there's guys out there with a lot more knowledge about how all this fits in.
Oh, there are.
But we're having the conversation and we're getting it out there, and we're inviting others to have that conversation with us.
Yeah, definitely, man. And it should be normal.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like coming back to, our outlook, I guess. That's where it all starts, doesn't it? Like, where do we fit in? How do we fit in? Are we just a separate self that's getting moved around by the universe, or is there something greater that we're all part of and we're all connected to?
Well, I think that you can't really put a duality on that. It's the one thing. It is all the universe pretty much experiencing itself one way or another. I mean, my realizations, in Buddhism, you're taught not to reveal things when you realize them. But I think anyone that's spent any time really in proper spiritual practice and truly looking at themselves and truly looking at how they relate to their reality would understand that it's very difficult to separate any of it, because at the end of the day, it's the duality is really the delusion. It's a non-duality, and it's I don't know, it's kind of hard to put into words, that experience, but when you glimpse it or when you feel it, everybody will feel it at some point. You just know, it's a knowing. You just know that there's no way that you can't approach everything you do in any other way than a holistic way.
I mean, I'm really inspired by some of the information that's coming out now, and I would encourage anybody listening to this podcast, and I hope to explore this in more conversations coming along. You're talking about how the science is now validating the techniques that you've been using in your practice for many years, some of the equipment that's available now. Well, the same thing's happening when it comes to what we're talking about now. I mean, there's an organisation called the Heart Math Institute, and these guys are brilliant. They've been doing this amazing work for years. And we actually came across them at a workshop, Davey and myself. And in this workshop, they demonstrated, they had people's hearts monitored, and they had sat them in front of computer screens where images were coming up on this computer screen, random images. And they were measuring the response from the heart. And what they worked out was that the heart was responding a moment before the images came up on the screen, right? So there was something informing, there's something, call it the matrix, call it the unified field, call it, source, whatever label, whatever word works for you, there was something communicating there beyond time and space.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if there was a horrific image to be presented on the computer, the heart was already prepared right in advance. And another word for this in quantum mechanics is quantum entanglement. It's another riddle that's sort of mind-boggling, but it's sort of pointing in the same direction as this unifying. And Rupert Sheldrake is somebody that I've also been listening to lately, and he was credited with coining the term the morphogenic field.
Yeah, I know the morphogenic field. So the system that I use is called nutrient-energetic system, or NES Health, and we studied off, or we're directed towards books,
right,
about that, and him and various others to really get an understanding of how it works, what the mechanics are, and all that. And once you open up and you really accept that this is fact, and this is, it's not the realms of, I hate the word, it just drives me up the wall. I just want to jump up and down and call that.
Welcome to In Body, In Mind. Join us as we explore the world of alternative and complementary health, wellness and life experiences. In this episode, you will learn how a heart-centered approach to providing natural health-based naturopathy services came about as a result of a deep desire to serve. As the practicing Buddhist Craig Hitchens shares his spiritual journey of discovery and the benefits of holistic living.
And there's absolute, and I think this is where, we're headed. There will be a melding of that and a realisation of that, where you will become more aware and possibly even be able to manipulate it. I don't know, but I certainly know in higher levels of Buddhist practice, the high level lamas can do some pretty amazing things. I've experienced some amazing things, and
so it's clear talking to you and all the times that I've been with you, Craig, this is real, and this informs your life and your being and your
it's the truth that I know.
Absolutely, and you're transmitting this through your practice and and in your, with your clients, and you've worked with, obviously, with over the 20 years, thousands of people.
Yeah, lots.
So you've got a lot of feedback over that time.
Oh yeah, I mean, in the beginning I got it wrong a few times, and you make mistakes and fall over, and you just got to dust your knees off and keep going, because that's what you do. But the way to sort of package it and deliver it to people is you've just got to let go of any preconceptions and connect at the heart level with the person, and really allow them to inform you of how and where they're at, and then you just shape it to fit their requirement.
Right.
They might be ready for something pretty advanced, they might not be. Wherever they're at, you just do your best to guide them along.
Right.
And I mean, I don't really heal people. I give them the tools to heal themselves. All healing is done within, really. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's a supplement or a herb or a heat of pressure point or whatever it is.
I mean, there is no.
They're doing it.
Yeah. No, I see. I see you. Every week or so, and I know every week you're seeing people and helping people, and it's a good thing for me, living in this community, there's people like yourself in the community who are not only circulating that, and you're working with some of the people that I'm also very fond of and care a lot about, who also come along and participate in some of our yoga classes. So but taking that to the next step, you're also involved in the community here in the Southwest, because you're not only interested in the health of people, but you're interested in in how we come together as a community, which I think could be a conversation for another day. So Craig, where do people find you? Because I'm sure there's going to be some interest to follow too.
I'm on Instagram. Craig Hitchens Naturopath is my tag on there. My website is craighitchenstherapies.com. You can find me on there. I'm also on Telegram. Ask around.
So you say the Instagram site, Craig Hitchens
Naturopath.
That's underscore, is it all?
Underscore Craig _Hitchens _naturopath.
Right.
You'll find me on there. And craighitchenstherapies.com. If you Google it, you'll find me.
And you've got some materials on your webpage. You've got some.
Oh yeah, I give a lot of stuff away. I've got a whole section on there where I've got recipes that I give away on there. I've got recipe packs that I give away on there. I've got all kinds of resources I give away on there. I've even got a series of videos using acupressure tapping and TFT to help relieve anxiety and stress.
And do you do remote consults or video consults or telephone
Yeah, I do.
consults?
I do. I certainly do online consults by video for people that are not in the immediate area, or for busy mums with kids that don't want to behave. I consult in Dunsborough on Mondays from 18 Griffin Drive. I'll also see people at home if they can't get to me in those times. So yeah, I'm flexible. I'll also do house calls for people if they're bedridden or something like that. I don't mind doing that either. I have several people that are unable to travel and don't like using technology to talk. They'd rather talk to you straight up. So I'll just pop the laptop in my car and off we go. Have a chat to them.
Brilliant. Well, I've loved our chat today, Craig. It's been awesome.
It's been great, mate.
I look forward to our next conversation on the lounge chair.
Yeah, mate, that'd be good.
We've got much more to talk about and to share. So thanks very much.
Thank you,
and thanks, listeners.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and we look forward to your company in our next episode, In Body, In Mind.